What's up, guys? Justin here again, and I want to thank you guys for watching that first video. And I really hope that that has help you guys grow in your faith and encourage you to grow. And even if you're wrestling with it, I believe that wrestling with it will help you grow in your faith as well. And before I get into this, I just want to say, the stuff that we talk about is just to have that conversation, to help critical thinking and to wrestle with our faith, because I believe that does help with growth. And again, we're talking about a non-essential here, so we're not supposed to be divided. This shouldn't be the thing that divides us. We are unified in Christ. So I really hope that you guys, if you guys have conversations and stuff like that, you can do that out of love, because that is the purpose of all of this. Right, so I had some questions and comments, and I kind of try to bunch them down into one question. And here's a question: how can God predestine people to hell and still be loving? Right. So before I get into that question, I'm going to start off with these two passages. The first one, Isaiah 48, verse 9 to 11, and this is God speaking. Yet for my own sake and for the honor of my name, I will hold back my anger and not wipe you out. I have refined you, but not as silver is refined. Rather, I have refined you in the furnace of suffering. I will rescue you for my sake, yes, for my own sake. I will not let my reputation be tarnished, and I will not share my glory with idols. Colossians 1, verse 15 to 16. Christ is the visible image of the invisible God, and he existed before anything was created and is supreme over all creation. For through him God created everything in the heavenly realms and on earth. He made the things we can see and the things we can't see, such as thrones, kingdoms, rulers, and authorities in the unseen world. Everything was created through him and for him. So reading these two passages, God is all about his glory. Everything and everything and everything and everything that God does is for his own glory. He does things to exalt his own name, because God is perfect and righteous and just, and he deserves worship, he deserves praise, he deserves love. Okay, and we as people, we are not perfect, we don't deserve any of this stuff. Only God is worthy. So you can say, oh, God is just a narcissistic God. Well, God is the only being that has the right to say, I deserve to worship, I deserve to create things for myself. Right? Now, let's move to love. Now, yes, God is love. That is a fact, it's in the Bible. But at the same time, I think we've taken God's love and we've elevated it over all the other attributes and characteristics of God. If you look at God's overall encompassing love, you need to unpack it, right? Yes, God is love, but God is also a righteous, just, wrathful God who hates sin, right? And you cannot understand God's true full love if you don't understand the fact that he is righteous, a righteous God, which is why Jesus Christ needed to come down to die on the cross, because of sin. So God is righteous and he hates sin. He must punish sin. So, which is why he sent Jesus Christ in our place. And that's how you see God's love. But if you just say, well, God is love, he loves everyone, he loves you, just come to him. Why? Right? Yeah, God love, that's cool. But you need to understand your sin. Right? And here's the thing, yes, God is love, it's true, right? And we elevated God's love, but you can't elevate his love over all the other attributes, right? All these things are on the same level, and it's all encompassed in God's glory. In the end, it's all about God's glory, right? God did show his love through Jesus Christ, but through Jesus Christ, you see all these other things, right? So going back to this question of if God predestined people, how does he love? Or how can you still be a loving God? Well, first of all, here's the thing. I don't think we can just look at it as, well, God created people to die, to go to hell. Boom, it's over. It's God's fault that we sin, or whatever. I think that's the thinking that some people have when it comes to, this whole predestination, free will kind of thing. But here's the thing. Matthew 5, verse 45 says, he causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good. He sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. And you see in this verse that God's mercy touches everyone on the get-go. Okay, God's mercy, so the sun shines on good and evil, rain on righteous and unrighteous. That's just God's mercy over everyone on this earth right now. You being alive right now is God's mercy. If God opened the ground up and you fell to hell, God would be just in doing so because we are sinners. God does not need to allow us to live. He could just snatch your life away just like that. Okay? We are not entitled to anything. All right? We do not deserve life. Okay? And here's the next. So that's, first of all, God's mercy on us. So that's love. Right? And another thing is God doesn't want people to die and go to hell. He wants people to turn to Him. First Timothy 2 verse 4 says, God who wants everyone to be saved and to understand the truth. So God's desire already is not for us to perish, but to be with Him. God wants us to be with Him. Right? So God shows Himself to us. How? Well, through our conscience. He's always speaking to us in that, in our guilt. He speaks through us, through other people, when they preach the gospel to us. God gives us opportunities to turn to Him, but we won't. Why? Because we are sinners. We're sinful people. We talked about that already. Right? We say, God doesn't love people because they're predestined to hell. And it goes like, okay, well, does that mean that I'm responsible for sin? That God's responsible for sin? And the thing is that God is not responsible for sin. So first of all, James 1 verse 3 says, when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does He tempt anyone. God is not the author of sin. He does not make you sin. He does not cause you to sin. You sin out of your own free will. Again, I'm saying that free will is limited to this. God, sin, we choose sin 10 out of 10 times because there's nothing good in us. Because if we say, oh yeah, I chose God, I chose to turn to Him, I was the one that believed in God and that He did, I did all these things, that's already the wrong view, because you read the Bible and it says we can do nothing. It is by grace we have been saved through faith. There's nothing good in us. No one is righteous. No, not one. No one seeks after God because we cannot seek after God. We are spiritually dead, and dead people do not make any choices. So going back to Pharaoh, right, as an example. It wasn't when you read Exodus, it talks about how the Pharaoh hardened his heart, and then there's some parts where it says God hardened Pharaoh's heart. And the thing is, Pharaoh, it's not like Pharaoh had like an on-off switch, like, okay, sin, God wasn't like that. He wasn't like controlling him with a switch to do good and then to do bad, right? It was just Pharaoh. It was just Pharaoh after countless times denying God, saying no. God's still offering chances and more chances and more chances and more chances. Pharaoh just got more angry and more angry and more angry. So God hardened his heart in that way, in terms of He showed Pharaoh love, and Pharaoh was like, nope. And how did God show Pharaoh love? Well, Moses said to Pharaoh, let my people go, and Pharaoh says no, and God sends a plague. Yeah, let my people go, no. Let my people go, no. Plague, right? And God gave Pharaoh so many chances and so many opportunities. Same with us, so many chances and so many opportunities here on this earth, and we still reject Him and we say no. When we're here on this earth, I don't know why, for whatever reason, we think like earth is like just a place to have fun and vacation and whatever, but it's like, this is the time you have to live and to get right with God. He's given us that already, right? And here's actually another good question that came out of it was, why did Jesus have to die then if God chose people already? And my answer is, well, Jesus had to die because of sin. Everything goes back to sin, right? That's why Jesus had to die. Romans 3 verse 25 to 26 says, for God presented Jesus as the sacrifice for sin. People are made right with God when they believe that Jesus sacrificed His life, shedding His blood. This sacrifice shows that God was being fair when He held back and did not punish those who sinned in times past, for He was looking ahead and including them in what He would do in this present time. God did this to demonstrate His righteousness, for He Himself is fair and just, and He declares sinners to be right in His sight when they believe in Jesus. Right? So, we're sinful people. God needs to punish sin because He's righteous and just. People in the Old Testament that didn't have Jesus to look forward, didn't have Jesus to believe in, those righteous people, when they died, they still had sin. God wasn't just like, okay, well, I know you sinned, but like, forget it. Like, I'll just toss it aside. No. Like, that doesn't make sense because Jesus still needed to pay for sin. And that sin was put on Jesus Christ on that cross, right? So the sins of the past, was put on Jesus Christ. God did this to demonstrate his righteousness. So again, God is a righteous and just God, which is why Jesus needed to die. And okay, so now, like, some of you may be thinking about, okay, so if I'm chosen, does that mean that, well, I can do whatever I want? And then there's the flip side of, like, well, if if I'm not chosen but I follow God, does that mean, like, when I get to heaven, God's gonna be like, too bad, I know you followed me, but I didn't actually choose you. Get out of here. So I'll say this, that God does not go against what he says in his word, in the Bible. And the Bible tells us the Bible tells us the marks of a true Christian, right? It says to follow God and to obey the word, right? So how do you know if you're chosen? Well, you follow God. You follow Christ. That's how you know you're chosen. For me, I've never had to wrestle with, like, oh yeah, well, what if I follow him, but then I'm not chosen? Well, God doesn't go against his word. On the flip side, though, if you think you can do whatever you want and you're chosen, I would say you're not chosen, because because it's not about you anymore. It's about God's glory. Everything is about God's glory. Right? That's God's grace. Right? It is by grace you have been saved through faith. I bring nothing to the table. I cannot turn to God. It was all God. It was all God. It was all God. Right? We're spiritually dead. You look at Lazarus, right? And he was in the tomb for like 4 days, and he was dead, right? And do you think Lazarus was saying, Jesus raised me from the dead because I'm dead? No, he couldn't, because he's dead. He can't say anything, right? And in us, we're spiritually dead. We cannot choose God, right? God chose us. And I just think, like, this is just on my part that I believe in this because I see that God is more powerful and more sovereign, and all the glory goes to him through predestination than free will. That's just me, right? That God gets all the credit and I get none, because I cannot do anything. I cannot partake in my own salvation. I cannot, because there's nothing good in me. And I just think, like, when you come from that free will perspective, like, oh yeah, look at me, look at what I've done in my faith. I've done this, I've accomplished that, I do this, I do that, and God is just like, help me. No, God did everything and he worked in me, but he's accomplished it all because all the glory goes back to God. I cannot take any credit. Now, I mean, I'm running out of time, but how does this concept now move into, does God have every single choice planned out for us? I mean, I would say I don't know. I wrestle with that. Again, I would say God has a plan and things happen that he wants to happen or that need to happen. That's all part of his plan. We can do nothing to make God derail his plan. We cannot break God's plan. Whatever God has set in stone is set in stone. So that goes to that whole concept of we are limited in choice, but God is still in control, and that's just the mysteries of God that my feeble mind cannot grasp around. And maybe you have a better understanding of it than I do. You know what? Good for you. But I mean, like, that's just when it comes to predestination and free will, like, I don't know. I just look at predestination. It's just like it gives God the most glory. That's what I see, and that's what this faith is all about. Giving God glory. So anyways, I thank you guys for watching this, and I really hope that it's helped you guys in your faith. This will be the last video that I post on this topic for a while, but feel free to talk about it in the comments and whatnot, or ask questions too. I'll read over them, and maybe I'll have a chance to like type something up or something like that. But yeah, and feel free to ask questions about any other topic as well. I'm down to answer that. Again, just remember, we are limited people just trying to understand the limitless God. So yeah, again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.